First of all, thank you, Honorable Professor Andreas sir, for inviting me. And I'm very grateful to two institutions. One is the Indian School of Political Economics, Pune, and another is the Baba Saheb Ambedkar College. So I'm very grateful to them for inviting me, and of course for my all the colleagues. So. I'm also grateful to all the faculties, HODs, Kamble sir, Dede ma'am, Pacharini sir, and others for giving me this opportunity. I know it's a little boring now. Three of them have already spoken and they have already covered, so I don't think there are many stuff in my plate now. They all of them have already captured that. But then I'll try to, because since I have to speak now, Andres sir has invited me, so I'll try to speak more on data. Correct. So I'll be speaking more on trade. Therefore, I have market rate. Okay, so always when you have red colors, that means that it's not good sign, and that's exactly is going to applicable to India. There is something wrong with India's trade, and that's what I'm going to capture in my talk. All right. So this is outline of my presentation. It's not going. Okay. So this is outline of my presentation, and I hope you are on second slide now. Online students, someone update me.
So we are just able to see your first slide.
First slide.
So your screen is freezed.
Yes, sir. Sir, screen you are very large. I mean small.
Yeah. So I'll. So are you able to see some figure? Yeah.
Yes. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. So what I'll do. All right. So yeah. Now I think it will work. So I'll not make it full probably. I think there is something which is troubling. So I'll just increase little. Yeah. Now this is visible. Correct? All of you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sorry for wasting a lot of time.
No, sir.
Yeah, so I think I'll go ahead with this because there is some problem, network issue. All right, so this is outline of my presentation. So I'll be speaking more on recent reform in trade and export import, and then of course some of the statistic, and then present issue and challenges. Of course, you know that India has basically, liberalized in 1991, and of course Professor Tirak and Rosa and Dr. Monojit has already spoken on that, so I'll not much emphasize. But then one thing is that before liberalization, I think we had a lot of restriction about the trade policy, correct? I think we had a lot of tariffs and so many things, so we are not open, correct? So I think it's all about after liberalization, we have started giving a lot of emphasis on opening the trade policy, and we didn't have any other choices. We had to accept it. All right, so what we are basically doing is that we are basically trying to understand how this trade reform are going to impact on our Indian economy. That's something, that's what the exact question which we are trying to understand from my presentation. So if you compare actually, there are a lot of other countries basically have tried to open up their economy. It's not we. If you compare with China and other country, I think, we have adopted it along with other countries. So it's basically due to have more stabilization, more fiscal policy again, to have some kind of stabilization in exchange rates, so that will help for our economy. Correct. So whenever we talk about trade, why do we need trade? We need trade so that we can increase the efficiency and productivity. Correct. Of course, we have a lot of, I think Rosa ma'am has already shown that we have a lot of laborers, correct? So we need trade so that we can achieve more efficiency and productivity. Therefore, we need trade. So let's quickly understand this model in a very simple graph. Okay, so now you can see this particular graph. What does that shows? Let's assume that we have on a horizontal axis, we have input, and vertical axis, we have output, correct? So what we need from this graph, we are basically trying to understand how we can achieve more production while using input. So let's assume that right now we are at point A. Right now we are at point A, and our wish to just achieve probably either point B bar or B. What does that mean? We are in a point B bar, we are trying to reduce the input and we are substituting those input to other commodities so that we'll be able to utilize those extra input for other purposes. I don't think India is going to do that because we have surplus in labor. So I don't think our objective should be shifting from A to A bar. Our objective always should be shifting from A to B bar, and that's what exactly happened in India. So what we need from this international trade and all, we need to more achieve the efficiency and productivity. So we'd like to shift from A to A bar, and that's what exactly India wants. So while using the same input, we need to get more output, and that's what we want from the trade. All right. So now there are many reforms which has taken care by other countries, and of course we are one among them. Correct. So now when we discuss about this reform in trade, I think the two concepts come in our. Of course, there are two important concepts. One is that we want to increase our export, and we want to, of course, also have some kind of restriction on import. Correct. So trade is nothing but when you have this two component, and you are basically trying to see whether our exports are more than import or not. So we always want, any nation want to have more export. Correct. Any nation. So when we discuss about trade, we need to understand two kind of policy. Correct. One is that how the reform has taken place in export policy and how the reform has taken place in the import policy. Now let's quickly understand. I know there are some difficult terminology, but I'll make it little easy to understand you all. Now I think this, yeah, I'll make it little small so that you'll be able to see the title. All right. So now when we have to, let's say, when we talk about the this export or import, there are some terminology called, let's say, tariff, restrictions and all. Now these are some kind of instrument which we have to use for having some kind of control over trade. So now I'll talk about two restrictions. One is that tariff and another is that non-tariff. So tariff is nothing but, so what we are basically doing, we are trying to open our economy after 91, and we are trying to make sure that we are charging less on import. We are charging less. So whatever taxes, whatever things which we were charging earlier, we want to reduce it. Correct? We want to reduce it. So if you look at this reduction in the tariff, you can find that there are most of the commodities we have reduced our tariff. What does that mean? We are making it more so other country can, let's say, export to us. Correct? So we are slowly opening our economy. So reduction in the tariff is nothing but we are opening our economy, and that's what exactly would just happen. Now this is not applicable to, let's say, some commodity like agriculture, and this is not applicable to some commodity like a consumer goods. Correct? So we are trying to reduce the tariff. Of course, we have surplus in labor, and of course, what is our basic problem is that we don't have much capital-oriented technology. So our objective is to reduce the tariff rate on capital-intensive technology so that we'll be able to import those capital-intensive technology, and we will be able to improve our efficiency and productivity. That's what our objective. And exactly to achieve that objective, we have tried our best to reduce the reduce the tariff on trade. Now we are not supposed to deal with the consumer good because India is having a lot of market. So if we if you keep a tariff low for consumer good, what will happen? The China and other country will export. So that's what we don't need that. So what exactly we have done? We have kept some goods where we need their support, and that's what capital-oriented, goods and services. So there we have kept more. We have reduced the tariff, but then for agriculture commodity we have not reduced that extent. Right now, another component. One is a tariff, another is non-tariff. Non-tariff is nothing but there are some quantitative restrictions. Okay, there are some, let's say, anti-dumping measure, or there is some technical barriers. Now these are nothing but we are just making sure that we will not easily open our economy So one is a tariff rate and another is other restriction. Now, like we when we are, let's say, when we are importing some let's say fruits and vegetable, we'll ask them probably those fruits and vegetable might have more chemical, correct? So this kind of restriction on a standard quality of food, fruits, will make sure that we have some kind of restrictions. Now these are three whatever 3-4 instrument which we are using again for protecting our domestic producer as well as other part of this. Now again, if you look at this also, there is a lot of reduction in the qualitative restrictions and anti-dumping measure and all, correct? Will not as of now go inside in that. So now very quickly, let's discuss about how we have changed our export policy, correct? That's what we need to understand. Now, if you look at our export policy from 92 to 93, what you can understand is that we had a 3-year export policy, correct? Then we made it 5-year export policy. So basically our objective was to increase the export from India. Now we have taken some kind of initiative. Now one thing is that we changed the name from import-export policy to export-import policy, because our objective is not to import more and our objective is to export more. So we changed that terminology. So we started calling it as a export-import policy. Now there are some changes I think which we have done to make sure that we increase the export. Now one is that liberalizing exchange rate management system which we have adopted. So our rupees value was decided by the market force. Earlier that provision was not there. So we adopted that provision so that people who are exporting, they will be able to utilize some kind of money to, let's say, again increase their export. So we had kept one provision saying that 40% of foreign exchange you have to keep with the government and 60% you can utilize for whatever this thing which you want to do. So what exactly we have done here? We are trying to increase the let's say competition, or we are trying to provide some indirect financial support to the exporters, correct? So we are trying to do that. Now this is so except for, let's say, so we keep our export policy open and we started promoting. Now again, we modified this export policy which was proposed in 92-93. So we realized that I think our agriculture commodities, we were not being able to export our agriculture commodity, and that's the reason again we modified that export policy, correct? So if you look at again the modified export policy in 1995, you will find that we started giving a lot of emphasis on horticulture and floriculture export. We started having some kind of, let's say, subsidies giving on those farmers. We also started increasing the ban which was there for the farmers. So we had kept 3 million tons. Farmer can export 3 million tons because we also have to take care of food security. So one thing is that we are slowly pushing our agriculture commodity so that we'll be able to export. Now there are some changes in export policy. Again, after that, so from 92 to 97, we had one export policy. Again, every 5 years we have to change the export policy. Now in 97 to 92, now we realize that I think emphasizing only on agriculture is not sufficient, and we also need to emphasize on other commodities, correct? And then we realize that other commodity, of course, we have, of course, service sector, which was absolutely doing good, and government started emphasizing on exporting those services, trade, and as well as IT export. And that's how the hub came in India, correct? So we started emphasizing on that. And there were, again, a lot of attempt by government to, let's say, promote export. If you look at the free trade agreement between India and Sri Lanka, that's one example. Even if you look at the setting up of the special economic zone, SCD, or setting up of the AGR, that's again for promoting the agriculture export. So what we have done in this recent policy, 97 to 2002, we have started emphasizing more on service as well as IT sector. along with the agriculture, and then we again started promoting our products export to other countries as well, not just developing country. Okay, so now this is all about export policy. Now let's very quickly understand what changes we have done in import policy. Now if you look at the import policy, one thing is that of course we have to now reduce the tariff, because we can't keep so much tariff on goods and services which we are importing. So one thing which you can see from this slide is that we have tried to reduce our tariff. That's the one. But then we also made it. We also make it sure that we have also kept some kind of those sector where we also kept our tariff little higher, so that there won't be problem for our let's say domestic producers. Now again, slowly we are reducing the tariff for most of the commodities, correct? For most of the commodities. Again, still, if you look at 92 to 97, if you really understand the WTO objected and argued that still your tariffs are little higher, and you since you are a member of the WTO, you have to reduce your tariff. But then we had some kind of, let's say, fight with the WTO or argument. But then slowly, we started reducing the tariff rate on those goods and services. So we are again opening our economy for imports. So there are a few changes here. Now, what we have done is that for most of the sector, we have reduced the tariff except agriculture. So you will still find some commodity where we have kept some kind of tariff, so that other countries of people should not just export their, let's say, rice to India, because we are already producing rice and other this thing, so that we'll be able to at least give some minimum support price to the farmer. So that's what our objective was, therefore having some kind of restriction on imports. All right, so now fine, now you have understood some policy, correct? Export import. Now let's look at whether those policies have really helped or not. Now if you look at this particular figure, what is this? This is nothing, it's a very simple, it's a GDP growth rate, correct? All of you know about GDP. Now this is nothing but, if you look at the first figure, it's a GDP growth rate. Now what you can find is that if you look at, so I have considered 70, 80, 90, 2000, 2010 and 2020. What you can understood is that if you look at before 90, you will find that the growth rate of GDP are somewhere around 3 to 5 to 4%. Now, if you look at after 90s, you will find that you see here the growth rates are almost nearer to the 5 to 6%. What does that mean? Yes, reform has helped India for achieving higher growth rate. One observation which you can find. Similarly, the reform has also helped India for reducing the fluctuation in the growth rate. Correct? So that's two observations which you can take from this. Now, second, I think Rosa has already highlighted. One quick thing which I want to highlight here is that we still, I think 60% population still depend on agriculture. But if you look at the agriculture contribution, it just contributes somewhere around 18%. So there is a huge mismatch between mismatch between the contribution and the dependency of the people. And if you look at, let's say, services sector, we don't want to promote this kind of service lead growth, which is not good for India. And that's what probably is happening in India, because we don't want this all hotels and all, because we want to promote more agriculture. We want to promote more rural economy, which is not happening. So in this figure, what you can understood is that one way we are going in a wrong direction, that agriculture sector share is declined. Another way we are going in a wrong direction, that service sector is increasing. But we are supposed to increase the contribution from industry, which is not happening. Okay, now let's very quickly look at, it's just a percentage, okay? It's just a percentage. If you look at the percentage of export to the GDP, correct? So what you can understood is that, yes, our exports are increasing. But then we could not have continuity in the increase in the export. So if you look at 2010 onward, I think our exports are not increased the way it was increasing after 2002. correct? So there you can find some kind of decline in export, which is not good for our economy. Now let's look at how we are doing in, let's say, import. If you look at, let's say, import, what you can find is that, yes, imports are also having similar trade. Okay, so now let's combine both the thing and let's look at, so are we exporting more or importing? And the answer comes here, we are importing more and exporting less, which is not good for our economy. And the gap which was there, if you look at particularly from 2002 onward, the gap between these two is increasing. That's not good sign for our economy. And here are a concern for us to how we can correct this. We need to keep our export figure on the top, not import figure. So we need to correct this. Now what, so I'll discuss about what reform which we can take to correct this, correct? Now, there is something called balance of payment. What balance of payment? So they basically try to see, they basically try to identify what your goods which we are exporting and importing. And they basically talk about 3 accounts. So as of now, just try to understand there are 3 accounts. One is the current account, another is a capital account, and a third is a financial account. So don't worry about all this terminology. This is a 2 different manual which was used by Reserve Bank of India and IMF. So don't worry about this thing. What you can just try to understand here is that when I talk about current account, sir was saying that we have deficit in current account. So in current account, it includes goods and services, primary income and secondary income. In capital account, which is a good for an economy. So whenever our capital account is showing some kind of surplus, that means that some amount which is coming from abroad, which is going to utilize for machinery or some kind of promoting the industry, correct? So we need to have both surplus in both the accounts as well as financial account. Now let's quickly look at what is happening. Now this is India's trade balance, correct? So if you look at the India's trade balance, now are we benefited from this globalization? The question you can see, I think after the globalization, our India's trade balance was in deficit. So whatever we are dealing, so whatever relation we have with the rest of the world, it's that the rest of the world is benefiting more from India than we are benefiting from them. So it's as simple as it is, correct? So in this case, what you can see here is that I think after the global liberalization, yes, we had a relatively less deficit in trade balance, but then after, let's say, over a period of time, I think that the trade balance deficit had increased like anything. So we had actually somewhere around 7%, which is not good for the economy. But then there is some positive hope. Again, our trade balance is again going in a right direction toward somewhere around -2 negative again, but it's a negative. Okay. Now why it is happening? Now, if you look at the current account, now current account is nothing but it includes goods and services, primary income and secondary income. Now, if you look at the current account, which is a major one, that's what Professor Tilak was highlighted. Now, if you look at the current account, you will find that almost our current account is having mostly the negative value. You can see in first figure as well as you can see in the second figure. What does that mean? We have trade deficit mainly due to the current account deficit. Now let's understand whether are we importing more goods, are we exporting more goods or services or income. So let's go inside into current account and try to understand what is happening. Now if you look at the current accounts and trade balance, you will find always a similarity, correct? So one thing is that what I want to highlight here is that we have huge current account imbalance. It's mainly due to the trade. It's mainly due to the trade, which I would like to highlight. Now, I have discussed about 2 accounts. One is that current account, which basically deal with the goods and services, and capital account, which basically deal with the net for the FDI and portfolio investment. So when you compare current account versus capital account, one thing which you can understand from this is that, yes, I think the major contribution is from current account. correct? So capital account, if you compare both the account, so we need not to be much worried about the capital account. Yes, it's also important, but then our deficits are higher basically due to the capital account. Now, this is a trade imbalance. This is not a good sign for India. This is absolutely not good sign. Now, if you look at again, now within current account, if you look at the goods, whatever goods which we are exporting and importing, if you just take both, so what does this mean? I think we are importing more goods and then exporting less good. Okay, so whenever we have deficit figure, that means there is a huge problem with the good. So India should more emphasize on how to increase the export of goods. Correct? That's the one observation which we can make from this. Second observation, services. As I mentioned you that in a second export policy, we had emphasized more on services. But then if you look at the service sector, which is absolutely doing good. So this is good sign for India. So we need not to worry about service sector. It's a doing absolutely good. Now, if you look at the primary income balance, again, we have some problem. Okay, so now forget about everything. Come back to the capital account. And there are one component, all of you have heard about foreign direct investment, correct? All of you have heard about foreign direct investment. Now let's look at when we are attracting more foreign direct investment. Now, if you look at, let's say this, you just look at this red line. What does that mean? FDI inflow to India, correct? This is a FDI inflow to India. Now, if you look at this particular figure, so though we liberalize our economy in 91, up to 2002, we could not able to succeed to get more FDI, correct? So it's that only from 2002 onward, we started getting more foreign direct investment. So from 2002 onward, you can see that the foreign direct investment has increased up significantly up to 2008. Again, there was, because of the global financial crisis, the FDI inflow again gone down and again increased. Correct? So some lot of fluctuation in FDI is not good for economy. Yes, it's going in the right direction. We are able to attract more FDI. That's a good sign for the economy. Now, if you look at, let's say now, I think I'll skip this thing. There is another component, net portfolio investment. What does that mean? When let's say someone has a company in India, and when abroad person is investing, when they are buying our Reliance share, that means they are investing more in portfolio investment, correct? Portfolio investment. So that's what basically the portfolio investment means. So in this case, yes, we don't have much problem in the portfolio investment. What does that mean? Other people, whoever are in abroad, they are trying to invest in our company. That's a good sign. So we need not to worry more about the portfolio investment. Now, if you look at the financial account, which I'll skip, we don't have much problem in that. Now, come back to the major slide of our presentation. Now, are we opening our economy, and what extent we have opened our economy? From this particular slide, we will get to know that, yes, no doubt, we are trying to reduce the tariff rates, and we have to, of course, follow the guidelines of WTO and other. So we are doing absolutely fine. I mean, we have to. There is no way we have to reduce the tariff rate. But one thing what you can observe from this slide is that I think there is a significant decline immediately after accepting or after going for the liberalization. But then it continued decline up to 2005. But then you will find some kind of smooth trend in 2006 onward. What does that mean? Whatever reform, which I didn't discuss how we have changed the reform in recent time, 2010 and all, because when I look at this tariff rate, I think I found that probably those reform has not been much influence on this, correct? So we have some kind of smooth. Now let's look at how we are doing at world level, correct? So if you look at this red line, I don't know whether you'll be able to see this second line. If you look at this word line, what does that mean? Even in the world, the tariff rate, there is a lot of decline in the tariff rate, correct? So in the entire world, it's going toward open economy after including all the. So now fine, we have discussed about the tariff rate. There is a reduction, there is a lot of reform and all, so on. Now, what are the major challenges which we might face? Correct? What are the major challenges? Now, if you look at one which was again highlighted by Professor Kedar in the morning session, one thing what you can find is that the debit, India's debt to GDP ratio, which was probably somewhere around 1590, again, probably that one decade it was fine, but then it again started increasing. So that means that government is in lot of debt, correct? So again, if you look at the recent reform, the debt is going down. But still, if you look at, let's say, somewhere around, if we, let's say, draw the line, it's more than somewhere around 55%. So that much debt government has, from where government will spend. When we say government has to pay, but government also has some kind of limitation. Now, one challenges for us is that increasing our government debt. The second challenges which we have is that not increasing the contribution from manufacturing sector. Correct? If you see here, I don't find significant. In fact, we need to more emphasize on manufacturing sector, which is not taking place in India. That's another challenge. The third challenge what we have is that, so if you look at this figure, what you can understand is that, yes, the per capita GDP is increasing. But is it increasing with the way the GDP has increased? No. What does that mean? That means that though our GDP growth rate, which has shown somewhere around 7 to 8%, would have not helped to increase our per capita income, but then it is just helping those privatized or those limited individual for increasing their. Can someone unmute as a host? Someone speaking. All right. So one thing is that if the per capita income is not increasing, and if the GDP is showing higher, then something wrong, and that's what's happening in India. So if we exclude the Ambani's income, per capita income will go down, and that's what is happening in India now. So this indirectly will tell you that the inequality is increasing in India. Unemployment rate, I think 7%, 8%, not more than that. But then when you read those, Rosa has already discussed, I think it's all about the more unemployment rate in unskilled laborers. Correct? So that's again one of the major challenges which we have. Now come back to our strength. What is our strength? Our strength is agriculture. And let's look at what is happening in agriculture. Now, if you look at this particular figure, still 70% people are depending on agriculture. And if you look at the reduction in poverty, you see here, I think still 25% people are below poverty line in urban area. In rural area. In urban area, it's a 13.7%. So yes, it's a concern, though we have got a significant success in reducing the poverty line, but then those attempts may not be sufficient when you look at the rural economy. That's again challenge for us. Just quickly look at this slide. What you can find is that I think we have got a lot of potential in agriculture. For most of the commodities, we have second, third rank. For production, for area. What is the problem for Indian agriculture? When we compare the productivity, what is the productivity? Productivity is nothing but total production divided by the area. Now, when you talk about the productivity, and when you take the Chinas, we are nowhere comparable. And that's the basic problem with us. We have huge surplus people in rural area, which we need to utilize. And if we are able to utilize, probably we might come on the top of this most of the indicator. That's again one of the concerns. Very quickly, if you look at again, yes, we have strength in agriculture, but then if you look at, are we really helping agriculture? Now, if you look at the area under insurance in India, what you can find is that only 26% area is covered under the insurance. That's not good sign, correct? If the rain won't come, from where the farmer will get income. That's one of the major concern for us. Second concern again, are we doing sufficient? Are we having sufficient attempt to increase our agriculture export? The figures are here, and it says we don't find much impact of those agriculture reform on increasing the export. Correct? And that's what exactly the figure shows here. Now, fine. Now let's try to understand: are we having or do we have? Are we able to compete at the international level? Correct. So now come back to the trade. So when we talk about the India's term of trade is nothing but if the export prices are higher than the import prices, then we have positive terms of trade. Okay, so let's say when I'm exporting this phone, and when I'm exporting at 10,000, and when I'm importing another phone at 8,000, that means it's good for us. But is it happening for India? And the figure shows that no. So we don't have. So what does that mean? We are paying more on importing those goods and services at higher price than the export. So therefore, we have. If you look at the India's term of trade, you see here, which is again going down. Of course, there is some kind of improvement, but this shows that we are not competent. We are not competent to have competition with other developed country. We need to really come up with some different strategic plan, and what plans neither I know, neither I have explanation for that, nor you might have. It's a government who has to come up with a different plan. All right, now fine. So now let's quickly look at fine. So if we don't have, let's say, competent, so for which country we are exporting, and from which country we are importing. Now, one threat here, which I want to highlight in this slide, is that if you look at the import partner, one thing what you can see here, we had a good import partner, which was the United States, but the share is declining. And another interesting thing, we have our neighborhood. The interesting figure shows that we are importing a lot from China, which is absolutely not good sign for us. And that's what's happening. That's what the data is showing. Now, if you look at again, export to US, I think, yes, more or less, we are coming back. We had a lot of export to US. Again, it declined, but then again, we are coming back. And again, we are basically exporting more to the United Arab and others. So one threat here is that the dependency of our imports on China is absolutely increasing. And that's so we are, if you look at the import, mostly we are depending on China by, let's say, 17%. That's not good sign for us. Now, what we export, just quickly, we export this oil products, we export metal coins, we export pharmaceutical products, but where we have strength, agriculture. So where you can see the agriculture comment, somewhere below than 4%. So there is some mismatch between our strength and what we are doing right now. So of course we need to increase the export from pharmaceutical products. Probably it might come soon, but then our strength, we are not emphasizing. Similarly, import. So we are importing, of course, oil, that's 28%. Again, electric components and all, that's fine. But then one figure which I want to highlight here is that we are again importing some kind of vegetable oil. We are importing fresh fruits. I don't think we need to do that, but then we are doing that. But then if you look at the export, we have also, we are exporting rice, spices and others. Now, fine, we have looked at the figure and we understood that India is not that much benefiting from the trade, from those figures. But then let us look at some kind of empirical literature and what exactly they argue. So one thing is that at a global level, yes, trade is helping them to reduce the let's say, cost. Trade is helping them to achieve the higher growth rate. Trade is helping them to maintain continuity in the higher growth rate. So at a global level, trade has helped. But if you look at again how it has helped for, of course, for reducing the transportation cost, communication cost, and so on and so forth. So no doubt, it has also helped for developing country to access for market and access for the technology. So there are benefit of the trade. So we cannot say that trade has not benefited. Trade has benefited for the world. Now, let's quickly look at whether this kind of trade, whether they have helped for increasing the GDP or not. Let's quickly look at, let's say, now this is interesting. You just look at here. Trade has helped for increasing the GDP, no doubt. Even if you look at India's, which you can see here in this slide, India's. So trade has helped for India to increase the total factor productivity. So no doubt, even after looking at the empirical findings from some literature, trade has helped us. Now, what are the present issue and future challenges. I know all of you are tired. I'll just take your 5 minutes. So let's quickly discuss about what are your basic, what are your challenge. So one challenge is that, of course, most of the developing country, some country, they are absolutely not being able to increase their income. And of course, they are also having the problem of poverty, unemployment rate, and so on and so on. Similarly, I think the major problem with the trade is that the inequality is increasing, and it's not only for developing country, it's also applicable for some kind of developing nation, both the nations. So there is a lot of unfair trade which has taken place. So I think there is a lot of, let's say, I think the transparency is still lacking. Though we talk about we are in this 20th century, I think there is a lot of problem about the asymmetric information. There is a lot of problem about the transaction cost. There is a lot of problem with opportunities behavior, and that's what this is one of the major challenge. Now, again, a lot of money is going from developing country to developed country, which is not good sign. That's again one of the challenge. And the last few is that I think we are more concerned about we are trying to protest more about the investor and not probably the farmer, or not we are concerned about the environment. And that's again a huge challenge which I feel. Trade is again not helping the unskilled laborers. Again, we have subsidies and so on. So one thing is that 70% of the gain is basically for developed country. It's a sum of the recent figure. So one thing is that, yes, there are a lot of tariffs which are more for developing country than developed country. So that's again not good sign for a whole world. So last two slide. Now, how we can increase India's share in the global value chain. So one thing is that there is a lot of we are not being able to basically increase is basically due to the lot of time which is taking for clearing those files. And of course, we don't have that much good ranking in ease of doing business. Need to emphasize more on institutional reform, which was again highlighted by Professor Tirak. And more than that, we have everything good on document. All reforms look good on document. And when it's come for enforcement, Bhagwan ke bharose pe chhod denge. All right. So with this, let me conclude my presentation. To what extent we are able to reduce the quantitative controls on imports. Of course, you can see that we have, of course, we are basically reducing those quantitative controls on, of course, on our, let's say, on from last 2-3 decades. Again, we have tried to reduce our import tariff, no doubt. So, except for a few things, but to what extent this policy stability, or to what extent it has helped for, let's say, the whole economy, middlemen, or the people who are below poverty line, again, question mark. And to conclude, we need proper institutional setup for dispute settlement between country to country. We also need some kind of domestic supply. We also need some kind of domestic policies state-wise. We also need to make sure that we also protect our small farmers and, of course, the small and medium enterprises. With this, thank you so much.
This is Siddharth from Christ Lavasa campus.
Yeah.
So I have two questions, sir. So as most economists say that reform is a lengthy process, hence under what condition reform will be feasible? And should it take into account if nation facilitates reform, or is it conservative? And should it also consider the school of thought?
All right. So your question is that reform take a lot of time. That's what I understood. And the answer is yes. Anyone else, students? I mean, anyone?
Sir, Saurav here. Sir, my question is that you discussed that our trade balance has been on a decline since we have been following the World Trade Organization, the liberalization policies they had proposed for us. So, in a sense, isn't it obvious that World Trade Organization has been working only for the high income, like the well-developed countries? So, are we in any, are we getting anything from this, like following World Trade Organizations? Uh,
Yeah, I think yes. They of course they have also some kind of support to the developing country, and they are doing that. But then it's all about first the politics, then economics. It's all about the influence of developing nations on this WTO. So if you look at the dispute between India and US, at the end, I think we had a little difficult time with US. So that itself shows that yes, this politics will influence on WTO as well. But then they are absolutely helping the developing country. So it's all about first politics and then influence.